Event-driven architecture promises loose coupling. Producers don't know their consumers. Services evolve independently, systems become more flexible, and technically, all of that is true. But the first time something goes wrong in production, teams discover something unexpected. The system is still tightly coupled, just not where the diagrams show it. Event-driven architecture doesn't remove coordination. It turns coordination into a distributed systems problem. The coupling moved into time, contracts, and coordination, and those are much harder to see. Modern cloud architecture loves one sentence: decouple everything. Use events, use queues, use streams. AWS architecture guidance repeats this constantly. Event bridge, SNS, SQS, Lambda fan out. The promise is simple. If services don't call each other directly, the system becomes loosely coupled. But that hides something important. Architecture is not about calls. Architecture is about dependencies. And events don't remove dependencies. They relocate them. Loose coupling is often misunderstood as services not knowing about each other. That's not the real issue. The real issue is who coordinates the system. Because most systems are not collections of independent services. They are coordinated systems. Orders depend on payments. Payments depend on fraud checks. Shipping depends on inventory. Notifications depend on state transitions. Those dependencies are not technical. They are business dependencies. And business dependencies don't disappear because you introduce an event bus. In synchronous architectures, coordination is visible. Service A calls Service B. Service B calls Service C. You can see the flow. You can reason about the transaction. You can trace failures. In event-driven systems, that same coordination becomes distributed. Events trigger consumers. Consumers emit new events. Other services react. The workflow still exists, but the coordination becomes implicit instead of explicit. And implicit coordination is much harder to reason about. This is where many event-driven systems become fragile. Because event-driven architecture doesn't remove coordination, it turns coordination into a distributed systems problem. Another shift happens at the same time. Events are not just messages. They are contracts. The moment you publish an event, you create a shared interface. At first, it seems harmless. You publish something simple. Order created. Maybe 2 services listen. But systems grow. Analytics, notifications, fraud, search, audit logging. Eventually, that one event becomes infrastructure for half the platform. And now changing it becomes extremely difficult because you no longer know who depends on it. APIs expose their dependencies. Events hide them, which makes event contracts harder to evolve. Then comes schema drift. Producers evolve. Consumers evolve. But they evolve at different times. One consumer upgrades, another doesn't. Another interprets a field differently. Another silently ignores the change. Now, the same event means different things in different parts of the system. At that point, your architecture isn't just distributed in compute, it's distributed in meaning. And this becomes obvious during production incidents. A workflow fails. Something didn't complete. Now the investigation begins. Did the service publish the event? Did the event bus route it? Did the consumer trigger? Did Lambda retry? Did the message land in a dead letter queue? Did another service reject the state change? Did a workflow branch differently? In synchronous systems, debugging means tracing a call stack. In event-driven systems, it means reconstructing causality across time, which is a much harder problem. And there's another form of coupling that appears here: temporal coupling. Consumers often depend on event order, event timing, event completeness. If events arrive late, behavior changes. If events arrive twice, behavior changes. If events arrive out of order, behavior changes. So while the services are technically decoupled, the system is still tightly coupled through time. And temporal coupling is one of the hardest forms of coupling to reason about. This is why mature architectures require event governance. Someone must own event schemas, versioning strategy, domain boundaries, consumer discovery, replay policies, retention policies. Without that governance, it becomes something else entirely, not a messaging system, a shared dependency generator. And once enough systems depend on those events, the event model becomes extremely difficult to change. None of this means event-driven architecture is wrong. It's incredibly powerful when used for the right problems. It works well when consumers are truly independent, when events represent stable domain facts, when replay is safe, when ownership boundaries are clear. In those situations, event-driven systems provide real decoupling, but when systems require strong coordination, event choreography can introduce more complexity than it removes. Sometimes explicit orchestration is simply easier to reason about, even if cloud architecture guidance rarely says that out loud. So, when architecture guidance says, decouple everything, an architect should ask a different question. What exactly are we decoupling? Infrastructure, teams, or the visibility of system dependencies? Because coupling isn't the real enemy. Invisible coupling is. Event-driven architectures often move dependencies into places where they're hardest to see. Loose coupling isn't free. It turns visible dependencies into invisible ones. This is systems thinking for architects.